I'm Chris Duff, and I'm here in Mackin House in Coquitlam here today. It's the 6th of November, and I'm here with Doug Wong, and I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting talk today. Let's maybe get started, Doug, by thinking about when you first came to Coquitlam. I was wondering, your parents, did they actually come here, and were you born here, or were you all born somewhere else?
I was born, our whole family was born in the Royal Columbian Hospital. And my mother was born in Burnaby, and my dad came from Canton, China. And I don't know how they met, but the whole family, all the children, we are 9 of us. We were all born in the Royal Columbian Hospital.
Oh, I see.
And I grew up right here, just south of where I'm speaking to you from Mackin House.
When did your dad come from China, do you know?
He came, apparently, he came by boat at the turn of the century, of the 20th century.
Yeah, you probably would have paid the head tax then.
Yes, he did. He paid a head tax. My older brother and sister, they worked at trying to get the redress, and I don't think we had enough papers to get that $500.
Oh, that's too bad. But they tried for quite a number of years.
They went through all the channels, right, and government agencies or whoever could help, and he didn't have the right papers, so, or we couldn't find wherever they were.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could tell me about what it was like when you were a little boy in Coquitlam.
Growing up was great. We had a wide expanse down there to roam and play. South of where we lived were South Asians, and they worked in the mill. My dad never worked in the mill. He got a job recruiting workers to work in the mill, and that's how we lived. That's why we had a house down inside the town site, and it was a older house. There was an upstairs and a main area, and it was a boarding house. We ran, my mother ran a boarding house for the workers, and that's how we got to live there. And growing up, we all went to Millside School.
So how many workers would you have had living with you in those days?
I guess at the height of the workers living in the boarding house were about a dozen workers, and the boarding house was originally a school for the Japanese. Oh, really? And when they were evicted, Second World War, that's when we took over and made it into a boarding house.
Oh, I see. So it was really run about 1940 or thereabouts.
Yeah, right.
That came about. Okay.
Yeah.
But you were obviously a small boy in Coquitlam long before.
Yes, and growing up, like I say, we had no trouble making meeting friends. Once we got to an age where we could go out, well, there were a lot of playmates around, and we never encountered any difficulties growing up. We all were one big family here in Fraser Mills. Yeah. It was really ideal.
So how big a place was it when you were a small boy?
Well, let's see. There was our house. There was the boarding house next door on both sides, north and south. And then there were a couple of residences north of us, which were occupied by workers, but they were not part of our boarding house. They got there on their own. And then on the south side was a huge boarding house run by a cook who did all the cooking, and most of the workers in that southern boarding house worked in the shingle mill, whereas the workers that worked on our side, where my mom cooked for, they were in the big mill.
So it was basically a mill community?
It was definitely a sawmill community, yeah.
So how many mills would you have had at that time when you were a kid?
It was, at the beginning, it was just, like I say, the largest mill in Western Canada. There were 1,400 employees down there at Fraser Mills.
1,400?
1,400, and gradually, when Crown Zalabak took over in the 50s, well, it, automation and things like that, it shrunk dramatically.
Oh, so you mean it back when you were a kid, it was very manual, lots of workers, and then mechanization reduced the number of jobs?
That's right. There were, when I was growing up, and my brothers, we all worked on the mill to put us through school on weekends. There were 2 huge burners for burning leftover ends of lumber, and that, in those days, and they didn't have the environmental thing. So these big smokestacks, it was huge plumes of smoke going up all over, and nothing was hardly worth saving. So they just, once they were clipped, they went into these burners.
Yeah, that must have made the air very acid and very smoky, actually, from what you said.
In the summertime, just like we see pictures of the modern industrial cities today, all you had to do is look up the river, and the smog that appeared, especially in the summertime in the warm weather, you could just see it hanging in the air. And then our house, when Mum and when the laundry was out, all the little burn, the sparks.
And then smuts.
The ashes, yeah.
Yeah.
They were quite prominent.
Yeah, that must have been fun for your mum to deal with that.
Hey, and like I say, growing up, we thought it was great, right? We never thought about breathing in polluted air and playing around, because there's a lot of swampy area where we grew up. In the summertime, mosquitoes all over the place, and the South Asians had cows, so we learned to milk cows, and we learned to eat Indian food. And we were the only ones that had a telephone down on that town site. So anytime anybody wanted a phone, they'd call Mrs. Wong, telephone. Mm-hmm. And ours was pretty well the meeting place down there.
So you're thinking now, what was that, 1940s? 1940s?
And 50s.
Into the 50s. So in those days, then, not too many people had a phone?
No, we were, like I say, our house was the only one that had a phone in that whole area. My aunt lived just south of us, and she, my 2 cousins, and my uncle, he worked in the shingle mill, but whenever they needed a phone, they'd have to walk up to our place to use the phone. And at that time, the phone was a party line, right? So when you picked it up, you're liable to get someone in Fraser Mills on the phone with you. So.
Yeah.
And well, the South Asians made quite a few ventures, to use the phone, and they were good enough people, and they lived where they lived, and we lived, and their children went to school with us, and so we had all kinds of friends.
So it was a pretty multicultural community even in those days then?
Very. And like I say, and then when we came up into the town site to meet the rest of the Fraser Mills crowd, well, that's, like I say, that's where we all became one big family. Like, we all walked to school together, and we pretty well all went to Millside. And then we walked to school together, walked home together, and played together. Especially on the weekends. We had friends come down, and because we had so much room down there, these friends of ours, especially a couple of boyhood chums that I had, one of them spent more time at our house than he did in his home. And yeah, and he was blonde. And my older brother used to say to him, "Bob, you spend so much time down here eating rice. Your hair is going black." But that's the way we were. Like I say, we all got along, and it was a lot of fun growing up down there. And my dad, like I say, he wasn't a mill worker. And how he met this person who said, "Look, we need you, we need workers down the mill. Would you help?" And my dad just somehow or another, I guess he had connections, and we started recruiting. He started recruiting workers, and the next thing you know, we were living there. They gave us a house to live in, and gave the boarders. You know, once the workers were recruited, they had a place to stay, and was my mom's job, cooking for the boarders. And my dad, he had a pig farm. He had a pig farm down Lulu Island. And when we were old enough, my brothers and I, we had to go with him in the truck and collect stuff. We went around to a few Safeways in New West and Burnaby and in Vancouver, and collected clippings, you know, from the vegetables and that to take down and feed the pigs with. So our weekends, once we were old enough, 8, 9 years old, we were hauling wood from the mill down there to keep the burners going to cook the food for the pigs. And we didn't ever get to sleep on the weekends because my dad, as soon as it was, you know, time to get up, got to get going, feed the pigs. And we had chickens down there. We had our own chickens. We, you know, lots of rooms. We built a couple of chicken coops and raised chickens and ducks and turkeys. And by the way, ducks and turkeys and chickens don't mix together, so we found that out the hard way. But the chickens were great, and the ducks, well, we had lots of ponds for them, and eventually we separated them, you know, built separate enclosures for them. Turkeys, well, they were too much work. We just tried turkeys 1 year, and that was it. And like I say, we all had, like there were 9 children in our family. The 2 older boys worked in the mill. They worked in the mill. 2 older sisters went to school in the West, so they got to skip the chores. The 7 of us, the remaining younger ones, my 3 brothers, 3 younger brothers, and the youngest sister, the 5 of us did all the dishes. We each did the breakfast. We each took turns for breakfast every morning when the mom cooked for the morning shift, for the day shift at 7 o'clock, boarders 8. We had to, you know, each one of us did the dishes, and then we had to make our lunches to go to school. And then off to school, and then when we came home.
And there were, what, a dozen boarders there, you were saying?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of dishes, I guess?
Yeah, they were on different shifts, right? They were day shift and an afternoon shift. Yeah. So half of them were on day shift, half on afternoon. So Mom cooked, or my dad got up first, lit the old wood stove, right? And he cooked the breakfast for the day shift. 7 o'clock, we all sat down and had breakfast with the boarders. And then we did the dish, and then we made our lunches for school. And then at noon, Mom did the noon lunch for the boarders when they came home to eat lunch. And then she did the 5 o'clock meal for or the 3 o'clock meal for the afternoon workers who ate before they went to work. And then she had to cook for supper time at 6 o'clock for the day shift workers. And then she had to cook again at 10 o'clock for the lunchtime for the afternoon shift. And then 1:30 was the last, when they got off work at 1, you know, their last meal before they retired for the day. So that went on and on. And the weekends, well, they were on their own.
Can you tell us a bit about the food she cooked?
The food was, well, we grew up with Chinese food, right? And to this day, I'm still cooking at home now. I cook Chinese food 6 days a week. I treat myself to whatever for the 7th day. Or my sister always invites us for supper on one day. So like last Sunday, we had roast beef, which I gorge on. And I like food, but I cook Chinese food 6 days a week, like I said. My mom cooked Chinese food every meal for these boarders. Every meal. We didn't, and we had one worker there who we called Cook. This guy was just a fabulous cook. Oh man, could he cook anything we wanted. He made pies, and you wanted an apple pie, we got apple pie. You wanted coconut cream pie, you got banana cream, pound cake. Christmas time, Christmas pudding, fruit cake, you name it, he could cook it. And the stuff now that you buy in stores, like the Chinese dim sum and things like that, he made them all. And the good thing is, you know, as we grew up, we got to put our hands in it too, and help mix the dough, for instance, or put the fillings in, and it was a lot of fun. Busy and interesting too.
So what else did you do other than help out on the farm and do lots of cooking?
Well, I was a sports nut. I played everything, and we built our own skating pond down there, and we had a skating pond. So I played for a hockey team in New Westminster. I played as soon as I got to school. I played everything. Like I say, you name it, I played it. And when we went to Millside, we didn't have a gym there. There was no gym, so we didn't have a PE class. And what we had to do is, when the good weather came, well, we got to play outside, right? You know, kick the ball around, or softball, and depending on the season. Marbles, you name it, we played it. And snowball fights, naturally. And they had, in the 2 rooms that were separate from the main building at Millside, they had coal stoves. So I was one of the people who was asked to go down into the basement of the big school and pick up buckets of coal to keep the 2 little primary schools in heat. And there were, like I say, no gym classes, so we had to make our own fun. And other than that, at home, well, like I say, we you know, had enough brothers and cousins and friends that we played softball. We went down, and you wouldn't do it today, but we rode the tugboats. You know, and there was no thing as WCB at that time. So one of the guys we knew, whose dad was a tugboat captain, he's, come on, get on board. So we rode around while we boomed logs, and we fished, a lot of fishing. And I had my 2 older brothers hunted, so there was lots of hunting. And like I say, weekends, well, we just had to find things to do, right?
Quite different to now.
That's for sure. I look at, like I say, today, you know, you hear the ads today saying, you know, come on, let's participation, let's get out and play. Well, these people today have a hard time doing that because they're so used to sitting there with their little gadgets and playing with them. And to get outdoors like we did, I mean, marbles, they probably say, what? You played marbles? You know, what is that?
So it's a much more physical society than it is now.
Outdoors, we were out, and this is why, even today, I'm not much of a television person. I'd rather I listen to the radio a lot, and when the good weather comes, well, I'm outside, or, you know, I belong to a golf club. And in the good weather, I golf mainly 6 days out of 7. And once in a while, we'll golf all 7 days. And then every year I go away for a golf holiday into Thailand. A friend of mine, and at first when we went, there were a whole group of us. But it's dwindled down now. But every year, 2 of us go over there for a month and golf over there. And
now, you were telling me earlier on today that you were a teacher for many years?
Yes, I taught in the district of Coquitlam for 31 years. Yep. And I taught phys ed and history as my main subject. And like you told me, I had one business ed course. And it was interesting. I coached everything under the sun, and in fact, one of my gymnastics teams is it's in the district archives, you know, as a teaching tool, because they filmed it.
So where did you go away to do your teacher training?
UBC. I went to UBC. I had one brother, my youngest brother. He and I were the only ones who went to UBC. I had another brother who went to BCIT, And my sister was a teacher. I had one sister. One sister was a nurse. And it was a fun thing. Every morning, God had to be on the freeway at 7 o'clock. If I didn't get on the freeway at 7 o'clock, the traffic would just just get you.
Oh, bad traffic even in those days.
7 o'clock, and in those days, in the in the 60s, okay, late 50s and 60s, left home at 7 o'clock and picked up a couple of passengers, and we carpooled. And at 7:45 usually, I'd be sitting in the parking lot there.
In Point Grey?
At Point Grey, we got there, usually in 40 minutes usually, and like I say, got a good parking spot, so we didn't have to walk too far. And I made sure that when I signed up, I tried to get the first 4 morning classes, 8:30 right through to 12:30, and tried not to get afternoon classes, then you'd be delayed coming home in the traffic. So usually I had 4 classes in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. But if you had a lab, well, that usually took you to 5:30. That was the only late day. But it was interesting, like I say. UBC was great, and I'm sure glad I'm not there now because, like I say, like everything else, it's tougher, and it's crowded and more expensive. Expensive, wow. When I was paying dues going to UBC, my dues for the year were $346, and I worked down the mill, like I say, to pay my way.
That was what? So that was when you started in the 50s, was it at UBC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Late 50s, 59. And like I say, $346, and when I was working down the mill, $1.72 an hour, too. And that's what paid my way through school.
Yeah, I guess in those days you could pay your way through school. A little bit different to now.
That's right, because gas, you could get a good tank full for $2 when you went to the gas stations. So gas was what? 35 cents a gallon. So times have changed, but I'm glad I did it when I did.
Take a pause here for 1 second. Brought to you by the fire department. Okay.
Yeah, so quite a different world to our world now.
Quite, and like you say, today's world is, well, to me, is a soft world. It's all gadgets and little push button things, and they're good. There's no doubt technology has taken over, but now, like I say, the health problem is more more of an epidemic because people are generally, if they're not involved in doing something other than their iPads and Twitters and things like that.
So you think the folks in those days were more active? They got out and about more, and
they had to be. And the other thing is, not only were they more active, they were probably not as healthy because when you look at how many smoked in those days compared to now, you see, and it's amazing. I smoked when I was growing up, and I'm sure glad I got rid of that idea. Saved a lot of money, and probably saved a lot of health problems. I never missed one day of work when I was working, and in the 31 years. And,
not one single day at school, eh?
I never missed. I never had to take a day off.
Well, you must have been pretty fit.
Well, I don't know if I was. Well, I guess I was. Like I say, I was very active. I still am. I like doing things, and like I say, I still play volleyball, go ice skating, play golf. There's something to do. I like to be in there doing it.
So if you think how things developed then, think about when you were a kid and then when you got back from university and got into teaching, had the community grown much in that period? Was it fast growing, new people coming in, or?
Not that bad. In those days, in the 60s, up until the 60s, the growth around here wasn't that rapid, you know. There was, and like I say, that's why it was easy getting around. And when we had to move out of Fraser Mills, for instance, when Crown Zellerbach took over and said, "Okay, sorry, we're going to evict you." When the time came, we bought a place up in Coquitlam near the Caribou Trails area on near North Road, and we bought a lot there, half acre, for $1,600, and built our own house.
So what year would that have been?
1956.
Right.
And we built the house. Well, we were living in Fraser Mills, and we were still going to school. So after school in the summer, when the weather was good, we'd be working on the house, and on weekends we were all, my brothers, the brother who was a draftsman, he designed the house, and we built it right from scratch.
So in those days, building a house meant you literally built it with your own hands.
That's right. We all got together, and my uncle, one of my uncles, was a great help. He worked for a trucking outfit in Vancouver, so if we needed something, he was there, but he'd always come over and help. And my dad was, you know, he'd come up and take a look at us, and naturally, every time it seemed when he came up and had a look to see how far the house was along, we were out there playing ball. And that disturbed him quite a bit. He said, "Come on, you guys, you're never going to get this house thing. We got." And it was really funny. Like, we were lucky too. We were asked to be out of Fraser Mills on the end of March, 1956. We never moved in to our house on Danzy until October 1956. At the end of, so we were lucky. They were very, very cooperative, and they didn't rush us. They said, "Okay, you do it." And but as soon as we moved, you should have seen. Like, we had the soil down there was just fantastic. It was dark loam, brown, black soil, and you should have seen our garden. I mean, our own place where we grew. I mean, oh, every spring, all the brothers, we had to go out and turn the soil over with shovels. Right? We had no tractors or anything. Each of us had to take a shovel. Each took a row, and we turned the soil over. We grew. We had lots of gardening to do, and we grew everything: vegetables, potatoes, peas. And we had a little pond where we grew sort of a root potato in there, which is good eating. And we had corn. Everything was good, but we worked at it. And then the borders to the south of us, each of the borders, you know, they had nothing to do with that. So they at their place too, they would find a plot of land and they would grow their own stuff just to eat. And when we moved, you should have seen the people from here up in the town site take their trailers down there and load up with the soil. They just, oh, no kidding. It was just a sight to see all these guys with their trailers loading up soil into their, you know, to bring to
Now, when you finally got that new house up, what happened to all the family gardens and stuff? Did that just stop?
That, like I say, the people here, they took the soil, the houses were demolished,
Yeah.
and that was it. They just ripped them down. I mean, and by the way, we had no insulation in our house. No insulation. There was an old wooden house, very comfortable. It was upstairs in the main floor. No insulation, and boy, I'll tell you, in the 49, 50, that year, it was so cold. I mean, I'd get up in the bedroom, we'd get up, and when we pulled the drapes, you could see the frost on the window, on the inside.
Oh, single pane window.
Right, on the inside, no insulation, and you know, and so it was cold. But so my dad, like I say, he got up every morning. He lit the wood stove. He was first up every morning to light the stove, cook our breakfast, and cook, you know, the first meal for the boarders. So when it was all ready, we took shifts. There were 9 of us, 9 children. So we took shifts. The 2 older sisters were first because they had to go get the bus. And then each of us in turn, we you know, into the bathroom, And the two older brothers worked in the mill. They, you know, so you talk about, we had one bathroom, that was it.
And how many in the house?
9 children and the mom and dad. That was 11 people using the one bathroom. And, you know, we had running water was good, flush toilet. That part was good. But, like I say, when it got cold that year of 49-50, the winter, we had to leave one tap running, right? We had that one tap running so it didn't freeze, yeah. But I'll tell you, the water was so cold and fresh there at the house. And electricity, we never had to worry about paying electricity bill because the company provided it. You know, the lights were left on 24 hours a day in the house. And so the fridge, at first we never had a fridge, right? Before we could afford it, we had an ice box. Had an old ice box out there. And every week, we had to, my dad, when we went out, we had to pick up 2 great big blocks of ice, right, to put up in the ice box to keep the stuff cold. And then miracle happened. All of a sudden, along came the refrigerator. It was, yeah, it was sure something. And every day, all of us, the boys, we had to get wood in for the fire, for the cook, you know. So in the morning, it was my job. My job was every morning get up, feed the chickens, okay? And then in the afternoon when I came home, feed them again and collect the eggs. And I had my other brothers who helped do that. But all of us had to get wood in. We had baskets. They had all these peach-type baskets, you know, baskets where fruit and vegetables. We'd fill up with wood and we'd bring them into the house.
So did you have a wood lot?
No. The mill supplied the wood.
Oh, okay.
It was really good because, and they had horses, by the way. When the first years, the horses hauled the lumber around. And as children, we'd go down the barns on the weekends, and we'd go down and get inside the barn because we get to know the guys who looked after them. And, you know, we get to play with the horses, feed them. And there were a couple horses, they say, hey, don't go near that one. He's pretty wild. But the horses delivered the wood, pulled the lumber around, and delivered the wood to our place. And the wood that we got was from the planer ends, you know, the wood that was cut.
Oh.
You see, yeah. And then we had wood sheds, so there was no problem. They dumped the wood, and we'd have to, you know, we all got together, throw the wood in the wood shed, and then from there it went into the house. So every day we had that chore. Wood in.
And you kept chickens out in the backyard?
Chickens, yeah. We had chickens in the backyard for every Sunday. Every Sunday we had a fresh chicken for dinner. And we had this fellow I told you about before, cook. He cooked the chicken and whether we...
And you grew the vegetables in the backyard?
Yeah, we grew our own vegetables. So, and we had we had fruit trees. We had apple trees and plum trees in the yard too, so we had fresh fruit.
So that was a big lot you got.
Oh, like I say, I'll tell you. No, that wasn't, the 1600 was up when we moved.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Fraser Mills, I mean, there was so much room to roam, it was unreal.
So when what I'm interested in is when you moved up to the one you...
Okay, when we moved up to the half acre, yeah. And we moved up to the half acre, once we got the house built, and there were trees in the backyard, too. There were apple trees in the backyard of this place we bought. They had fruit trees, so that was good. And there was a little ravine running next to the house on the east side. And a nice creek running through, and little fish ran through it. And it was wild, right? There were trees and bushes and everything. And there was a wild apple tree growing there, too. So we had fresh fruit. And then in the backyard, behind the garage, we had an area where we could grow our own vegetables. So we made an area where we grew vegetables, just like we did down, not nearly as, you know, as much, but we had an area where we grew tomatoes.
But you had the chickens and what have you up there as well?
No, we didn't have chickens because once you get into well, how do you, in the neighborhoods like today, right? They don't allow you to have animals.
Yeah.
So
They're too smelly, I guess.
And we never had chickens now. Once we got up there, we said, okay, we we can't be building an area here. There's, you know, what'll the neighbors think? So, but we had a garden, and now we had something different, which we never had down in Fraser Mill. We had a lawn. We, you know, had the lawn to cut, and never had that down there because the grass that was there was, you know, the cows came around and ate it, and we, you know, we never said, hey, you know, we need an area out there to cut grass and make it look nice. I mean, it was just a play area. I mean, it didn't, you know, belong to us, but there was so much room, we didn't have to say, hey, let's make a lawn. And the area where we played was, like I say, from the river down south right up to pretty well Brunetta. You know, we had all that area to roam, because there weren't many houses, right, other than the town site. And of course, Booth Farm was there too, but that was all trees, and the creek that ran through Millside there ran by our house. And salmon ran up there. You know, we used to watch the salmon come up every year, you know, while we were going to school. And so we had, like I say, we had a huge playground. No worry about that.
So really things changed a lot then when you got that newer house. Obviously you couldn't live off the land, if you like, anymore because you didn't have as much land.
Well, I guess you can say we became civilized then because you know, we had property all around us, and we just couldn't roam wherever we wanted to.
So thinking back to those days, the late 50s and so on, I mean, I guess by then you'd been to UBC, got your teaching qualification. If you think of life then, could you tell us about what life was, you know, around about 1960? What are your impressions now?
Well, like I say, life in those days was, we got together and found things to do. Like, you know, we didn't sit in the house and turn on the TV. And
but there was TV by then, right?
Oh yeah, there was TV, and you know, eventually, you know, a couple of the friends of mine, they like to watch wrestling. Eh? When wrestling came on, they'd, oh, come on, we've got to go and watch wrestling. But I built, because I was such a active in sports, like even in Fraser Mills, they had a little basketball. I built that up in Dancy where we built it, up against the wall, up against the garage. I put a basketball hoop on the driveway, so I played basketball. And then I got into, other activity. I started curling, and I played hockey. So I got into other activity. Now I'm, like I say, I still play volleyball. So there were a lot of activities to do, and well, naturally, because now we had money, and bought season tickets for the BC Lions, for instance. Bought season tickets to the Canucks. I went to a hockey game. Well, New Westminster, when they had the Royals, what a great hockey team. Yeah. You know, and we went, a bunch of us went there and sold programs. Yeah. Programs, made $2 a night, and I thought, holy man, that's great, $2, because we got in for nothing, right, and sold programs. And our boss on Saturday nights was one of the teachers of mine at Centennial, Dan Doyle. He was looking after programs. That's how we got the job, selling them. And to this day, by the way, I still run into him. He still looks great. And usually run into him a couple times a year, and he always asks about the family, because all of us played football. See, he was the football coach, so the three of us played football, and he was the coach. And he sort of said, when I went out to join, he said, why do you want to play? I said, well, you know, because I said, I want to play. I said, it's a new sport, and everybody else is playing. And he said, but you're only 120 pounds. I said, well, I can run, though. I said,
so you're never a big guy?
Never. No, like I say, I'm the size, I don't weigh much more than 130 now, so I haven't. And I'm still, like I say, I still enjoy doing things. But as you say, the activities in our days growing up, Well, like I say, a lot of them, if you know, some of the guys, the other guys that I play with, they like going to movies, going to a theater. Well, I didn't like to go and sit there for a while like that. They said, let's go to the show, but we, like I say, we found things, you know, we'd go play somewhere, found a playground and get a bunch together, and whether play touch football or play lacrosse or street hockey, you know, whatever, just to keep us going. And gadgets, well, weren't part of our lives.
I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what it was like when you first started teaching.
When I first started teaching, it was interesting because then you could put your hand on, you know, pat somebody on the back and say, nice going, you know. And the children in those days, they sort of respected you. You know, they believed in you, and they, you know, when you walked in. And I used to always say, hey, look, you can call me two things, either sir or Mr. Wong. I said, nothing else. I said, if you do behind my back and I don't hear you, I said, that's fine. But I said, here, when in class, this is what you call me. And they were very, very cooperative. Very cooperative, and like even today, like you say, most of them didn't give you any problem at all. Most of them wanted to learn and get along with you. And that's what I used to do. My philosophy was, look, we all have a station in life. You've got something to do, I've got something to do. You know, I'm here to help you learn, and you've got, you know, you've got to do it a little bit. And if you do it, you're going to be better off, and so am I. Then I don't have to phone your parents. You know, and I don't have to, I phone your parents anyway, you know, whether you're doing bad or good, I phone them and I talk to them, and I said, but I said, if you do your job, you do your end of the job, and I do mine, I said, hey, we're going to get along fine. And it worked out quite well that way. And because I coached, I guess I probably got along with some of them better than others because they were on teams. And
so what were you coaching in the school?
everything. In the fall there was soccer. In the fall there was volleyball. And then there was basketball. And then in the spring there was track and field. And I always had a gymnastics team. And my philosophy was, because I was a gym teacher, if I couldn't do it, I wouldn't ask them to do it. Yeah. So, and even teaching gymnastics, like I say, I mean, I could do flips, you know, and do the basic things. You know, I didn't try to go overboard. But I had a couple of them who really, you know, they took over, and they could do phenomenal things on the trampoline and on the ring with the rings and the vaulting box and on the mats. So it was interesting.
Thinking of those days teaching compared to when you retired, which I think was in '95, do you think that did you have a bit more freedom on what you did in those days, do you think, or was it about the same as later on?
I think I had more freedom in those days, and you know, you weren't as tied down as you are now. Today, I would think, you know, you have to do certain, you know, so much of the curriculum. In those days, you know, if you wanted to spend more time in one area and less in another, you could do so. And there was, to me, there was more time to relax in those days. And it wasn't push, push, push. You know, got to get through this. You got to get through this. And I guess too, because there weren't as many options. Mm-hmm. You know, there weren't computers. There weren't all these filmmaking, for instance, and all these modern technological things to carry on. So it's probably easier. And like I say, you could put your hand on the student and say, "Way to go!" Pat him on the back or something. And eventually, what I do, the only thing I did was I just shook hands. That's the closest I came, and I made sure there were a lot of people watching when I shook hands and say, "Okay, happy birthday." Or way to go, you got, you know. And today, well, like I say, it's the attitude is, I'll sue, and
It's even much easier to get in trouble these days.
I think so. I think so. And today, too, you're more under camera watch, right? Every gadget's got a thing to take a picture with, so you've got to be very, very careful in what you do. And that's good. I mean, today, well, I guess it's still your word against theirs, and it's still, well, pretty fair. I don't think there's too much one way or the other.
So thinking back then to the 60s then, did you notice a lot of changes when, say, you went and moved forward to the 70s, or?
I guess the biggest changes were in the areas of, like I say, different courses, new courses, and of course the music and the fashions. You know, they play, and the gadgets. You know, they play a big part in the development today, and they did then. And most of them were for the good. Most of them were for the good, and it made things move along faster. And I'm not a technological person, so it's all those things were beyond me. I mean, I still like figuring things out.
Sure. But as we move forward in time, then say 70s and what have you, did you see a lot of change in this area? Say with more people coming in or more industries, or?
Yeah, definitely. Now, as you say, a lot of houses being built, new houses being built. Even around here, like I say, the properties opening up, and the prices, wow! And then the little strip malls now. Everywhere you turn now, there's a new shop, little strip mall, or an apartment, a high-rise going, because they got no room to go out now, so they're going up. And yeah, a lot of immigrants moving in, and especially north, up in the Westwood Plateau area.
But thinking back, that was kind of starting more in the 70s when more people were coming in from other countries, or?
Yeah. They started coming in, yeah, and the properties started opening, and like you say, Coquitlam Center they had to build, and once these huge projects going, that brought the people in.
Oh, right.
Yeah. They had brought the people, and and all of a sudden Coquitlam became a place where I say, holy cow, that's not out in the boonies. It's not a bad place to be, and well, look at it today. It's booming.
Pretty urban now.
Yeah, very urban, and in fact, as you say, it's a city now. It used to be just the district of Coquitlam, right? And now it's a city. And the municipal hall just used to be right across the street here, right? Now it's a big thing down there by the Coquitlam Center. So it's as you say, it's changed. It's grown up. The roads, the traffic, people. Yeah, and the industries, right? A lot of factories, especially in the eastern suburbs, right? Like in the Mary Hill area, all the different kinds of factories that have opened up there,
and I guess all the original sawmills and what have you are all gone, are they?
That's right. Even Fraser Mills now, there's no more. It's no more. What they're trying to develop down there is a housing, a big housing project, a little townhouse type things. The mill is gone. All it is a memory now. When you look back, and we don't consider Coquitlam a sawmill, city anymore. It's more just a place to reside.
Yeah. When you were a kid, did they even have canneries and stuff like that?
Yeah, there was the cannery in Royal City, right there in Front Street. The cannery was working there. My sister got a job working in the cannery there when she went to school. Yeah, the cannery was there, And there were a lot, like I say, as I said earlier on, did a lot of fishing. And down in the Fraser, we used to fish every weekend when the mill wasn't working, go down and fish. And now, well, with so much pollution taking over and so much modern machinery, the new boats, you know, and all the gadgets they got to catch all the fish, it's changed quite a bit.
So if you go back then, say 70s or what have you, then you really notice things start to change then, and things like fishing weren't happening the way they are.
Yeah. Modernization, I guess we call it, took over, and you know, not as many people said, "Hey, let's go fishing" anymore. You know, now they said, "Let's go shopping." You know, you know, we'll go buy our fish. You know, we don't go and. Yeah, the new generation of people coming in, they decided they didn't, you know, they didn't want to be blue collar. They wanted nice houses and different kinds of jobs.
So kind of more of a middle class area.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, a new middle class. It's pretty well taken over now, and it's nice. You know, to see what's happened, and even though it's not as private anymore, but it's a good place to live, and still very, very comfortable, not too noisy. And if I had to do it all over again, I would like it the way, you know, it's been great.
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting period to have lived through, eh?
Great. That's for sure. I wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, like I say, we never got television until 1954. Yeah. So, you know, that's why, you know, television's nice. You know, now I like to get information, but it's not the be-all, end-all for me. And you know, a lot of the modern things are great, and it's, well, that's what's happened. It's called progress in today's world.
Yeah, thinking back to the 70s and 80s again, what do you think, what else happened around you, do you think, that was, you know, really life-changing, and that's really, you know, compared to when you were a boy? Can you think of anything else that's...
Other than the technology, I guess the main thing that's taken over, like I say, is the expansion, you know, of the whole city of Coquitlam. I mean, more roads, houses, development. Yeah, development's taken over, and it's opened up. More people now, and like I say, and a lot more schools being built, and.
So if you think back, for example, back to say like the 70s and what have you, in those days pretty well anybody who wanted a single family home got it. Was that how it was compared to now? Or?
Yeah, pretty well. People had no problem finding a piece of property, for instance, you know, in those days, to say, hey, yeah, okay, let's build here, or let's go find. Now, usually it's subdivided and built. So in those days, right, there were places you could look and say, hey, I could establish something here or build something here. And there was room to grow, but now, as you say, it's pretty well developed.
Yeah, pretty much. Not too much empty land.
No, that's for sure. And it's, as you say, it's moving eastward now. That's where it's going.
Anything else you can think of? Do you think that's, if somebody was watching this this interview, what else do you think people might like to know about, you know, for that period where you've, you know, your time you've lived?
Well, when I think back now, how hard my mom and dad had to work to get us going, and then how, you know, how we pitched in to make sure everything went along, I would say that era was great. You know, it taught us about life and family, and today I think we've done a good job of showing the future generations that, hey, there's nothing wrong with getting along and growing up together and helping out one another, and it just makes for a better society and a better family, good relationships all around.
Good. Well, thank you, Doug. It's been great talking to you today, and I think I've enjoyed that. You've certainly taught me quite a bit.
Well, I want to thank you. You know, this was an unexpected thing, and you've been great. And it's been nice meeting you, and thank you to the crew. And it's time to go home and cook now.
That's right, indeed it is. Yeah, for both of us.
So thanks very much.